Alan?
Hi, how are you?
Angeline,
Hey,
nice
good
to meet you.
Welcome to Horton Ridge.
Thank you, thank you. So you guys are a malt house and you grow some grains?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We are the underpinnings of beer.
So Horton Ridge Malt and Grains, this is a beautiful spot. Tell me about what you're growing here.
Well, in the background you can see some rye. Rye is one of the grains that can be malted.
What made you decide to get into growing grains and malting?
A couple of years ago I was deciding what the future of the farm would be.
Right.
And given the increase of the craft beer industry in Nova Scotia, I thought it would be good to take a kick at that can. And one of the entry points into beer making that farmers can take is the malting process. Rye as an animal feed doesn't have a lot of value. As a bread, it's got a limited appeal. And then I realized that bingo, you can make booze from rye. In the bowl I have the malt, and in my hand I have the grain. They look quite similar. There's a slight difference in color, but the inside of them is completely different. If you were to bite into this, it would be hard and gummy and might break your teeth. If you were to bite into that, it would be crisp and sweet and quite friable. You were able to break it
This
apart
is a
with
lot
your finger.
softer,
You
for
wouldn't be
sure.
able to do it with that.
Right.
So this is what is in the Reverend Horton wheat.
Right. So how does the kiln work?
So this is a perforated deck. So the malt sits here, and our batch size is about at 1 ton, and it would fill the kiln, say, up to here.
Wow.
And then, of course, we close the door and then we fill it through that chute. And we have a couple of wood pellet boilers here. So the wood pellets make hot water, and then we transfer using a heat exchanger. We transfer the heat from the water to air, and we blow it up through the malt bed. And then it exhausts out the top and outside. Well, we're malting barley for the purposes of making beer. And the first step in that process is we have to hydrate the barley to get enough moisture into it so it'll germinate.
Right.
And we've done that downstairs in our steep room. This is called casting. We're bringing the malt up from the steep tank on a conveyor belt, and it falls into this wheelbarrow. This barley has about 45% moisture.
Okay.
And it's just started to chit.
Okay.
Chit meaning that little white sprout you see. So that's a good sign. That shows that it's germinating. And malting is all about germination.
And that's to convert those starches into sugars for the beer, because that's what the yeast needs. It can't use the starch as it is.
That's right. So this will stay here for 2 days, and then we'll move it over to here. And over here we have barley that's further along the curve.
Right.
So this has been on the floor for 3 days. So it's 3 days further along than that, and you can see there's some very well developed roots. You can see the rootlets, and if you break open a kernel, then this is the white stuff, and it just goes to a nice white powder, which then forms the basis of the maltose.
So that's much softer than your regular barley before all this process happens. This is heavier than it looks. That's really nice. So what percentage of the grain here would be from the rye?
This would be about 15%.
Okay.
And typically any beer that has wheat or rye in it only has 10-20% in the rest of it being barley.
So later on today, we're going to actually head over to North Brewing, and Peter has a beer that I think he said was made with your wheat from here, your malted wheat?
Yeah, that was the first beer that was made with our wheat malt. Recently we came into some wheat off PEI. We malted it, and Josh Herbin, the brewer at North, one of his favorite singers is a Texas rockabilly singer named Reverend Horton Heat. So he just wanted to make a beer called Reverend Horton Wheat.
That's perfect.
And I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for showing us around, Alan.
Not a problem.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So for today's episode, we were talking about grains and malt. We just visited Horton Ridge Farms and
Awesome, yeah.
saw their malting process, the malt house.
Great.
Just thought that you have a beer that's on tap here, the Reverend Horton Wheat,
That's right, yeah.
and thought that that might be a good pairing. Tell me about this beer.
Awesome, yeah. So we were super excited for that beer. That was one of the beers that we made for Craft Beer Week, which just passed last week. It was also for Horton Ridge Tap Takeover upstairs. We had
Right.
we had 15 different beers, all made with Horton Ridge malt. So kind of helping to highlight the fact that there's a locally produced malt, which is new within the past year and a bit
Right.
for the province. So we're really excited about that.
So the beer that we're drinking is the Reverend Horton Wheat. So it's an American wheat ale, and you can see it's a little bit hazy from that wheat. So that's really nice. There's a lot of tropical fruit notes there, and it's
a lovely
light.
beer, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really light beer, but it's got. Do you taste those fruity tropical notes that are in it?
Yeah, totally. It's a terrific summer beer as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a little bit creamy too. It's got that would be from the wheat in it that they use in the grain bill, so that's really great. How would you think of pairing this beer with food if you were to come up with something? Where's your mind going?
For me, I probably would go with more of like a contrasting flavor, with something quite fatty and kind of earthy.
Right.
Something salty, something that this beer can really cut through.
Yeah, that would work great because actually the carbonation from beer is really good for cutting through fat in higher fat content dishes. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. All right, cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Nice malt rye from Horton. Butter. Really nice earthy dish here. Nice sweet and vinegary. Okay, here we go.
Oh, wow. So tell me about the dish. What have you made today?
Okay, so what we have here is a confit chicken leg,
Okay.
rye malted risotto. So there's an obvious connection there with the beer, and brown buttered Brussels sprouts.
Great,
Yeah,
great.
with a malt gastrique.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the gastrique has malt in it, malt
It
syrup,
does. Malt vinegar.
malt vinegar,
Yeah.
and the rye in the risotto has been malted at Horton Ridge Farms as well.
It has, yeah.
Okay, so both of those ingredients, the malt and the rye, are sometimes things that you'd see as grains for brewing.
Totally, yeah. And
cool.
you know, it's the risotto itself is a very earthy component, and there's a lot of sweetness to the dish, and it's salty, and you know, the hops in the beer and the citrusy will really cut through and make for a lovely pairing, I think.
That's great. I can't wait to try it.
Okay, that's a super simple dish to make, but just works so well with that beer.
That's awesome. Pairs great together too. It almost reminds me of the beer. Kind of reminds me of having a stuffing on the side or something. You know, it really gives that bready essence. Yeah,
Totally,
that's
yeah.
great. That's great. That's really good.